All right. Well, welcome. I'm Jen Hurd, and this is the Thrive Through Life Change event, where we're going to learn how to regain powerful personal energy, create an inspiring vision, and a balanced life in spite of everything going on around us. I'm a professional organizer, and I have been for 30 years. And I decided to create this event because over the course of years, I worked one-on-one with many, many clients. And some of them would come through the life change that they'd called me about very easily, and other ones would not move through so smoothly, and they just wouldn't thrive. And so I decided to collect a whole bunch of experts from all over the world who can talk to us about major life changes, and that there's really no major change that you go through that can't be handled and grown and you can't come out thriving on the other side. So today, my guest is Trish Jenkins, and she is a really, really very interesting and fascinating gal. She had worked in a corporate world for 20 years or so, and she had a major life change curveball thrown at her, which she will tell you more about, in 2009 when her 3 girls were very young. And after that time, once that transition happened, she decided that she would turn that into something where she could inspire people. And she went into speaking and ministering to faith groups and went back to her prior career, which was, and this will give you a little clue, investments and property and futures. So Trish, welcome tonight. So good to talk to you.
Oh, it's so great to be able to meet with you and talk with you and be with everybody on the internet. This is great. Saves a lot of travel time.
Yeah, it sure does, because you are down under. And I'm back in Michigan in the US. So we're quite a ways apart, but the wonders of technology. So Trish, you spent some time as a guest of the Queen, as you put it, which I love the way you phrase that. It's a really optimistic way to look at it. So maybe you could tell our audience a little bit about the backstory for how you went through this big life change.
Oh, yes, Jen. So we had been doing fairly well with property renovations and so on, and I was looking for other investments that were more cash flow oriented. And I met a fellow who traded currencies, and we invested with him and it went well. And then he lodged for a license. He actually became what you would call a mutual fund. So we would call it a managed fund with managing people's investments. And I became an authorised representative for him. And what I didn't know is that he was actually a thief. He was a crook, and he was a fraudster. And I don't know what investigations the government does for approving these people, but they approved him, and he must have ticked all the right boxes on the form. But anyway, people were investing with him, including us, and what he was really doing was what's known as a Ponzi scheme, which some of you may be aware is when you think you're putting money into something, and when you get a return, you think it's profit, but really they're giving you a little bit of your own money back, but keeping the rest and spending it doing whatever, and then more and more people have to put money in order to keep it going, and eventually it implodes, and that's what happened. And I didn't know that he had stolen money. We just got to a point where he said, oh, look, there's no payment this month because the market's changed. And it wasn't guaranteed. So it was my job to tell everyone, me included, I had 6 figures in there. We're not getting paid this month. And as per, it's not guaranteed. Now, that was hard. And some people said, oh, I'd like my money back. And they got it. He gave people the money back who asked for it at the time, at the early part. Then another month went by, and another month, and it was my job again to tell people, there's no money again. That became very hard very quickly, and there's nothing more frightening than a frightened person. And so when people are scared, they panic, and I had people calling, emailing, turning up at my house.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, asking, begging, demanding their money. And I just, it was day after day, and he was harder to reach, and eventually I couldn't take it anymore. And my resilience had worn down. And now today I speak on resilience because it's got to be something you keep topped up. And I'm very careful about that now. But when so much keeps hitting you, your resilience lowers, your mental strength lowers, your emotional strength lowers, and you make decisions that you would not make in a calm and rational manner. And I said to him, look, these people have to be paid. There's money over here. Can I use that to pay them, just to give them some relief till next month? And he said, all right, do that. Now, that money was not meant for them.
Oh.
And so what I actually did was misuse funds. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I didn't steal it. It doesn't matter that it gave them some relief. I shouldn't have done it. And I thought it was only a temporary fix.
Right.
But it wasn't. He was reported to the authorities and I was invited for an interview. And even in the interview, I said to them, look, you know, this is what's been happening with the market. This is what I've been doing. I said, now, look, I paid people with this money. Can you tell me what to do so that I can fix it up? Because I could have replaced that money from my line of credit from my house. You know, how do I adjust this? And they just said, you did what?
Oh, no.
And I thought, well, this doesn't sound good.
Yeah,
and
right.
it just went downhill from there. Shortly after that, we were advised to go into voluntary liquidation, which I've since learned means that someone else controls your money and pays themselves the hourly rate going through your books until there's none left.
Oh,
pretty much.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so all our properties were sold up, including our home. It was just a really restrictive time and frightening, and nobody could tell me what I'd actually done wrong technically within the law. And whenever that went on, that was 2005.
Okay.
And
That's a while then. Oh, yeah.
it was. And that took 2 years. And then I was served with papers charging me with fraud.
Oh, no.
And that took another 18 months and I never denied what I did. I said, look, this is what I'd done.
Right,
and
right.
So finally in January 2009, when my children were 10, and I have 3 girls. Chelsea's 10 and the twins, Felicity and Olivia, are 7. I went to receive my penalty, which could have been a fine, but global financial crisis had just happened, and people were pretty touchy about finances, and I got the maximum.
Oh, and you were honest about it. You would think they would have been a little more kind since you admitted what you did. Didn't matter.
No, well, that's what I did expect that, and my lawyers and even the prosecutors were actually very good, but the judge just decided to make an example, and I don't know whether he lost money in the global financial crisis. Maybe he did. I don't know.
Maybe he was a little bit out of shape. Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not allowed to comment on the judge or the sentence, or and complain about it. But it is what it is. And so yes, I went away for 8 months, from January to September in 2009.
That must have been quite a time, and it wasn't a friendly crowd there either. I mean, it was an actual prison.
No, people ask me what prison is like, and the best way to describe it is, if you remember being in the 9th grade, round about the 9th, I think in America you're around about 14 years old, roughly, 14, 15, yeah. When girls are at their worst, the mean girls.
Right.
Imagine being stuck in the 9th grade with all the mean girls.
Oh, no. Oh, heavens.
That's what it was like very often.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to learn to adapt, and I found that I had to make some decisions around how I was going to cope, as I had in the years leading up to that. And that's what I'd like to share those keys with your audience today, so that you don't have to be in prison to feel trapped.
Oh, absolutely.
The strongest prison bars are the ones in our head, and whatever your circumstances are, you can overcome them if you think differently. So, that's what I love to share today, a little bit about what that was like, but also the keys that actually help people to get up and over again.
Right. And you brought some show and tell about what that situation
I
looked like and
I
whatnot.
did. So shall I share screen and we'll have a look
Yeah.
at some pictures and we'll see
Yeah,
if
I
our
think that's
technology
really
is doing what
fascinating.
it's supposed to do?
Since we're talking about prison bars.
Yeah. So can you
Yeah.
see my big picture of a
Yes.
dark cave? Great. So I love this picture because, and it's how I got the title of my book, called Treasures of Darkness. Treasure is not found on the street, it's in the dark places. So you can have hope that whatever circumstance you're in, treasure can be found if you look hard enough. And those things are the lessons that you can take away from it and the good things that come out of it. And very often that is about, even when you've lost all your money, what matters most is your health and your loved ones. And if you can hang on to those things and value those things and let go of the need to be right and to chase your money. I mean, yes, chase your money if you can, but
Right.
don't let it be at the cost of your marriage or your children or anything like that. So that's what's most important to me.
Yes. You
Now,
have to take those priorities and hold them. Yeah, hold on to those.
exactly. So now this
There they
was
are.
taken in about 2008, 7 or 8. So that was our family. We had lost our home, but we were determined to keep our family together. So there's Chelsea and the 2 little ones and my beautiful, handsome husband there. And
Yeah.
he actually said to the lawyers, "Look, can I go instead of her?" And
Oh.
you know, they said, "No, it doesn't work like that." And I said to him, "Oh, hun, you're way too handsome for prison. You're way too pretty. So it's best that I go." You know,
I'm sure he appreciated that.
yeah. But our attitude was our family first, and I was very fortunate to have a husband who he never once blamed me. I blamed me,
Right.
but he didn't. And sometimes if you've stuffed up and got yourself into a pickle, you have to be able to forgive yourself. Um, it you, there's a certain amount of blaming others, but if you can own your part, like I was set up by a crook, but I had to own my part in it. So when I owned that, then I was able to forgive myself for that. So there's a couple of keys there. Own your part. Don't think about what other people have done to you. Forgive
Right.
them if you can. And I just thought, you know what, criminals do what criminals do. And if I hadn't used poor judgment, I would have only lost my money
Right.
instead of my money and my freedom. So it's all
Right.
relative. Some people think losing money is the worst thing in the world, and it can feel like that. But you'll spend all your money to keep your health, and I'll tell you what, you will spend all of your money to stay out of jail. I can
Out of
promise you that.
jail.
I know that one for sure. Yeah,
Yes, for sure. Oh my goodness, I would imagine
yeah.
so. So
So the
this is the
strongest
rep.
prison bars are in your head. They really are. It's all about how you think about it.
Definitely.
And we'll get into a bit more of that. But I wanted to show you, this is what it looks like inside in the general prison in Australia. And I have reason to believe that America is not so different. And the cells are behind those doors. And I'll show you inside what they look like. And you'll see that the mattress, it's a vinyl covered mattress, vinyl covered pillow. And the shower is behind this wall. And the toilet has no flip up seat, it's just all molded together. And at the top is a sink, and what you can't see is 2 buttons, one of which flushes the toilet and the other one is a little bubbler that you can drink out of. So it's lovely to drink out of the top of a toilet cistern.
Oh my goodness, that's terrible.
I know. And at the top, that silver dome there is a mirror, so that when they count you every 2 hours, if you happen to be in the shower or on the loo, then they can see you and do that. But this is a stock picture I took of a cell, and what it really normally looks like is more like this.
Yeah.
Because we were doubled up. And I have since heard from a prison chaplain that they now have bunk beds in there as well, so they can fit 3 in there.
Oh
And
my word.
it's and given the sort of people that you meet in prison, there's a lot of mental illness and a lot of drug addiction and habits and all sorts of things. And so it takes a lot of patience. You've really got to learn to get along with people who can be quite they can have some behaviors that can be quite disruptive.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we are. Lap of luxury. So there's that one. What else was I going to show you? Oh, there's a few things that I'd like to share, but I do have one picture. I wish I had known then. I coped reasonably well then, but I wish I had known then what I've since learned about mental toughness and attitude and so on. The number one thing that did help me in there, though, was choosing to see people differently. When you're in a tough circumstance, as we are now with life at the moment,
Right, having a shelter with people.
And you will go through tough things. Our instinct is to go with our feelings, what we're feeling about it. And what I learned to do was to step back from that and think, okay, you're feeling this because you're either hungry, tired, hurting, triggered, in pain. And often we talk about our triggers like everybody's got to tiptoe around our triggers, and that justifies our poor behavior when we react. When really, I chose to see these women and my circumstances differently. And how that happened is when you get to know someone, you're living in close quarters, you get to hear their story, you get to hear what's happened to them, what's made them that way. And yes, we're all responsible for our actions. But I learned to see past the behavior and how they looked and the broken, blackened teeth from the drugs and all that stuff. And the language, oh my goodness, the language. And I saw past all that, and I saw a person.
Right.
A human being that just wanted to be loved and feel some sort of significance in a world where they are at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
So when you have a circumstance that's difficult and it makes people around you unappealing in your own perception, and especially, with things with politics and things that go on, we stereotype groups, and we can get angry at a demographic. So, if you've been hurt by someone in a church, it can make you prejudiced against all churches.
Right.
I'll never go into a church because of what these people did. You create your own prejudices. When you can see people, the person in front of you, really see them, then those barriers drop away and you can start to care about them and choose to love them very often.
And I would imagine while you were in there, as you're encountering all of that, those personalities and all of that, and you mentioned it briefly a little bit before, but I wanted to spend a little more time on the resilience mindset, because you talk a lot about that and how you develop that when you're in this situation and you're.
Yeah. So the resilience mindset, and I remember doing this even in here, in every circumstance, how you see determines how you succeed. And there's two things to look for. One is the blessing in it, in any circumstance. Yeah. We were in a concrete yard. So if I skip back an image, outside these, on the left, can you see my mouse moving?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So along that wall was a doorway, and it's a bit like a school hall. When you have assembly, there'd be doors that open out, and there'd be a concrete pad with caging over it, but that was outside. So we got to go outside sometimes, and there would be cracks in the concrete where there'd be little blades of grass come through.
Oh.
And sometimes, I missed grass. Here's something else that's helpful. If you're feeling stressed, get outside, take your shoes and socks off, and stand on grass. Feel the earth. It really helps, and just breathe. We couldn't do that, but there were some blades of grass that were on I'd sit on the concrete and just touch these brave, resilient little blades of grass. I mean, concrete is hard, but where they were cracked, it came through, and it really was symbolic of hope and persistence. And I would touch them, and I would think about that. That we have hope, that no matter how broken our circumstance is, we can be like that grass and we can rise up. And not only that, they're beautiful, and they give off a blessing. You look at them, they give pleasure. They actually nurture us. So, that was really important.
Yeah, even something
How
so
you
simple. Yeah.
see, yeah. So looking for the blessing in the circumstance, but also search for the lessons. In the couple of years preceding prison, I was aghast that I had been fooled, because I had a history in finance. I should have known better. I should have
Sure.
seen the warning signals, but I didn't see the ones that were coming, and I wanted to know how I missed it. So I researched that, and I ended up drafting a book that that I now offer on how to spot fraud warning signals and how to be more savvy in finance and in relationships, because very often it's about the relationship you have with someone. Often with women, it's romance.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't, but there were powerful lessons. So instead of thinking, why me,
Yeah.
which is perfectly natural, we do that. Instead of thinking, why me, start thinking, what now?
Yeah.
What now? What can I do with this now? Where's the value now? And so you might write a book. It's therapeutic to write those lessons. So look for the good and look for the lessons. Very powerful. And see people as people and care about them. That takes your eyes off yourself, and then you can grow.
And I
Yeah.
find that in my life, that's been huge too. When I've gone through any big changes where I had, negative impacts and, things would be really, in terms of my mental status, I would be depressed or anxious or whatever. I found that if I stepped out of myself a bit and put myself into a project that helps other people and just removed myself from the equation a little bit, it really does make a difference. It really does sort of bridge the gap and bring you back to reality.
It really does. It really does. Yeah, and we'll go into some more strategies to help sustain that, because you don't want to burn out either, because you can be so much about serving other people that you actually get too busy and you burn out, and you do have to self-nurture. So that's going to come in when we talk about our mental ecosystem.
Yeah.
And some other things that will go forward. But it was hard work. There are two stages to what I went through. One was while I was in prison, and the other one was when I came home. Because it's kind of like holding your breath for all that time. And then when you come home and you exhale, you can break into pieces and need a bit of a recovering time. This is me on my first day home.
Yeah.
And I've got my little card there saying, "You are special." My little sunglasses there I bought for $5 in the prison before I left. And this is a picture that my mother took as I was gazing out the back windows after I got home. That's what I wore. That's what I got dressed in while I was in prison, because I had some casual clothes brought in.
Oh, okay.
And so that was me arriving home. I didn't even know she took it. It barely registered. But I love this picture.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it because the battle scars are there. And actually, if you can see the bits of blondie, wispy bits, and remember, I was blonde.
Right, from the picture with your kid. Yeah, your hair was a lot lighter, and then.
Yes, well, this is my natural colour with a little bit of help these days. But
Right.
yeah, the real crime was 8 months of regrowth. That was
Right.
That was the real.
It's like with what's been going on with COVID, we're all having regrowth.
Oh,
I'm learning all my friends' hair colors now.
But I wanted to show you those. I've had the privilege since then of visiting different prisons. This one is the one where I tried to copy the picture of Johnny Cash outside.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Prison.
Folsom Prison. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's when I was there doing a speaking tour some years ago. And since then, I've been able to, when I travel, I actually go into prisons when they let me to speak to people, to encourage them about having hope for the future, and that it doesn't have to stay that way. So,
Wow.
if the difficulty I went through, as embarrassing as it is, because no one wants to talk about how they stuffed up so badly. But you know what? My message is more important than my pride.
Right.
So there might be someone on here who thinks, well, she's an idiot, I would never do that, and might be triggered by the thought of loss of finances and so on. I'm really sorry that would happen to some people, but I can't help that. But if there are people who find this encouraging, if it enables them to think, well, gosh, if she can share her story and get help, because you do need to get help, you can't just do it on your own.
Right.
If that helps one person who's listening, then what I went through was worth it.
Exactly.
So
I love that shot. It's very creative and fun. So you toured the United States with doing a lot of speaking across the country.
I did. I started in 2013. So when I came home, I had nothing. I wasn't really employable because my background was sales and finance, and I had a fraud conviction, which is so humiliating. You want to go for a job and you fill out the forms and it says, do you have a criminal record? If yes, give details.
Oh, okay.
The whole story, so they would think, look, I'm not really a bad person, I'm actually very good, and I'm competing with people who actually don't have that blemish and they're quite good and they could actually do that job. Who are they going to pick? They're going to, it's that shortlist. If you're going to shortlist someone, criminals, yeah, we'll chop them off the list.
Yeah, you're kind of the first to go, sorry.
Yeah, and I wasn't disadvantaged enough to get one of those jobs that the government might place you into, picking strawberries or sorting socks or something, because I actually had a husband who had a job. Right. So I was not considered disadvantaged enough. So I was in that limbo of, I wasn't damaged enough to actually get help into a job, but I was too high functioning, but I was damaged enough that I needed some help, and I had to find it pretty much myself. And I did get some counselling and developed some keys myself. Now, my faith is a big part of that. If you have got faith, if your faith is not working for you, look at it again. You're very welcome to find out more about mine. I very much am about pressing into God and Holy Spirit being active in my life. Now, that might look different to someone else, but whether it's prayer or some sort of meditation, that quietness is what is where you do business and where you can get stuff sorted out. So there was a bit of that as well. But yeah, going overseas, I had to look for the lessons. What did I have to offer? And I had that book sitting there on my computer about business, and I didn't want to publish it and people find out that I'd been in jail. But then I had to think, well, I'm just going to have to take the leap and be honest and open and be brave. And in doing that, I found that the chambers of commerce opened up to me. Their women's groups opened up to me. They wanted to hear my story and benefit from the lessons that I had. And they were all about what to do with business and finance and so on. And that's good. And that's how it started. And then it evolved into, what was prison like? How did you cope? How did you get back up again? And that's a lot more, it's a lot more happy.
Right. But it deals with the emotional components. You started with sort of the analytical component, and then it moved into the, which I think is appealing to people, especially now, vulnerability and, that honesty component. And those things are what appeal to people in terms of, especially today. So your timing was good. You were ahead of the
I was ahead of the game. Yeah. It is that authenticity though, because people can relate.
Yeah. I like what you said on your website too. I wanted to segue to this little portion of the conversation, because I think it's important too, is that if you really want to take charge of change, we need to learn to use critical thinking and communication, and that empathy, which you talked about in the beginning, sort of treating people as people and meeting them where they are. And I wanted to unpack that a little bit about the critical thinking piece and the communication piece.
Yes. Oh, so important. So here's what I mean by the critical thinking skills. It's not being a critical person. What it is becoming aware of your thought processes. And it's our instinct to naturally believe whatever's going on in our head. Oh, that person doesn't like me. I can tell because of the way they looked at me. We make these assumptions and we interpret what's going on when we don't know the facts. We really don't know, and we don't know what it actually means. We can give it also, we give situations a meaning. We have to stop and pull back and go, hang on, why am I thinking like that? And quite often, it'll start with a feeling that you're not even aware of. It can be just a feeling of restless dissatisfaction and a bit,
Right.
and then you start thinking, stinking thinking, just
Right.
resentful, jealous. I mean, how often someone does well and we go, oh yeah, but did you see what she was wearing? Or
Right.
no, he's got to be corrupt. Or we just have a natural bias towards our group, our demographic, our political party. We just automatically side with it and go with it instead of stopping and thinking, hold on a minute, wait. Let's try to be objective about it. You've got to question this stuff because stuff flies into our heads, and it might be, you might be feeling unsettled. You trace it back. It might have been a Facebook post you read that upset you,
Right.
and then you moved on, but
Right.
the feeling lingered, but you didn't realize.
Right.
It might be a conversation you had. It might be a disappointment where you didn't get that job, and we start flowing with our train of thought without, but we have to be in charge of our thinking and challenge it and then replace it. So critical thinking skills, is it objective? Is it right? I've taught my children when they come up with, talk about things with politics and what's going on in the world. And I've tried to talk to them about, no, hang on, it's not whether it's left or right. Is it godly, and how do you know? Is it who is it fair to? Do we like it because it suits us? But who does it disadvantage? And most often people just vote for whichever way suits them. And I'm not going to get into up or down or left.
But it's very true. It's very true. It's very much a we they, especially in the United States in recent years. It's very much a we they situation.
And generally we believe what we're brought up with. But even then, at some point, we've got to question it. And even in terms of faith, my children have their own faith. Now, I have influenced them. I have not left them alone to just believe whatever they want, whatever garbage some persuasive person. But I've had them to be independent, critically thinking, why is this? Why do I believe this? Why is it true? Why is it worthwhile? And I mean, that's in the faith realm, but there's other things too. Not everything that goes on in here is good for you. So
true. Yeah. Very true.
And someone else might not be a good communicator. They might have an abrupt personality. And so we resent that and we reject what they say, but that doesn't make them wrong. You've got to be able to go, hold on, you might have a supervisor who's just a bully, but maybe they're a perfectionist and maybe they're really passionate. Maybe there was an accident that happened in the workplace some time ago that traumatized them. And so they're really touchy about getting it done right. And they just don't know how to communicate well. Now, bullying is not okay, but we don't have to instantly catapult ourselves into the role of victim either.
Right.
Because maybe that person can be helped by your encouragement and support and your excellence at your job.
Well, and I think too, communication builds trust. So if you're able to bounce something that they've said back to them, and say, well, this is what I heard you say. Did you really mean that? And sometimes question it in a gentle way. They realize they've said it in a way that is appropriate, but you don't have to accuse or whatever to get the point across.
Well, that's right. I mean, imagine doing that in prison. The communication skills are not great.
No.
Yeah, exactly. And even the officers, people who should know better, they were the hardest people to forgive because they were the ones in power, But I had to learn how to let things go and how to do that, and not bring it into my future. So give two things: give people the benefit of the doubt, and use your good manners. We don't have to get angry and upset with people just because we don't agree with them or even because of their delivery, just to be considerate.
Right. You have to be able to parse that out a little bit, take a breath and think, okay, where did that come from? And
well, that's right.
I know a lot of people, I used to help run a group therapy session for anger management and road rage. And so many people in that group were on such a hair trigger, and they never realized they would take things so out of context. Like if somebody cut them off on the road, it was automatically a personal affront, and you had to break that thinking down for them and back it up and say, well, wait a minute, what if just tell a story. Like, what if the person in that car had a sick child and they were racing to a doctor and they weren't thinking about you? They were thinking about their situation. Would you be as angry? And so we had to have a lot of those kinds of conversations to unwind that sort of that issue, because they completely misread the situation. And that's just an extreme example, but it was fascinating work, sitting in these group management or group sessions, therapy sessions, and talking about why their hair trigger went off. And you have to debunk that for them over and over, and it takes a long time to build a new habit, and create
Look,
that.
it really does. And often it's ingrained from family history, because that's how if your family was always like that, then it's ingrained, and it's only by becoming self-aware and questioning it. And in some cases, there might need to be some healing. There might be some, like for those who are spiritual, there might be some things that need cutting off, or some NLP exercises, neuro-linguistic programming exercises, where you can cut things, with your imaginary scissors and things like that. But there's also, for those who are believers, that you can cut hereditary ties. Yeah. But the habit thinking, like alcoholism often runs in families, and if it doesn't express in alcohol, it might be some other type of addiction. You can break that, but then you've also got to work on the habits that make that a lifestyle. And until you become aware, and it's not to condemn anyone, self-awareness is freeing, and it's not going, oh, I'm such a bad person, I do this all the time. There's an exercise where this is one of the tips that I do, instead of arguing with yourself, we do affirmations. Right? We might say, I'm a good person, I'm a good person. Well, let's use a common one. I'm skinny, I'm skinny, I'm skinny, I'm skinny. I don't like food. I am this. And on the inside, you're going, you liar. Right. Look at you. And we are our own worst. We're terrible best friends to ourselves. Terrible. Like if you heard someone speak to your best friend the way you speak to you, you would say, hey, this is not on. But what if we said, you know what? I have struggled with this, but I'm getting there. I am actually so when that voice says, you're no good at this, you're going to stay, overweight, and you're thinking, no, I'm getting, so you know what? I have been overweight, but we are working on this together. You're speaking to your subconscious. We are working on this, and we're making progress. You don't have to worry. We're going to be okay. Look at what we've done together. It's okay. And together you move forward. So instead of being at loggerheads with yourself, for me, it might be my organizational skills, because I'm a creative. It's hard for me. And I started saying to myself, do you know what? Yes, I'm a creative, and that's a blessing. And in the past, I've not been very organized, but today, remember, you were able to stack those books. Mm-hmm. It wasn't much, but you were able to do it. And you only need to do a little bit more than before, and we're getting there. And what I do is enough, because I don't need to be perfect.
That's such a key word. That's such a key phrase. Even what I did was enough.
What I did was enough, and you're okay. I'm okay. I'm getting there. We're making progress. We are making progress, and it's so gentle, and it's not. That way you're speaking to your subconscious, and your subconscious can go, yes, okay, so you're agreeing at the start, yes, this was an issue. Like even with anger, yes, I have been very angry in the past, but look at the work we're doing. We're learning to question our reasons for being angry, and I'm not getting as angry as I was, and we're going to beat this, and I am a loving person. I do love my family, and I can, and you know what? I'm going to go right now and speak a kind word. I'm going to go and speak to my son and say, you know what? You're doing great, and I love you. It might feel fake, but you know what? Even though it feels that way, it's good for me to do this, and he needs to hear it. So it's not always about what you feel like, it's about what has to happen. I used to say that with my kids about brushing their teeth. It's not whether you feel like it, it's about what has to happen.
Has to happen, right? Yeah, exactly. And that's part of that mental aspect that we need to master. And
Yeah.
Oh, there was such a good quote I heard the other day. My integrity is greater than my mood. In other words, I'm going to accomplish what needs to happen, whether or not my mood suits it right now. In other words, I've said this is going to happen. I know. I love that phrase. My integrity is greater than my mood.
So good.
But that's the mental game. That's part of that,
really
mental mastery. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to give you a physical exercise too to cement this. So,
yes.
You know how, all right, so I'm gonna move. I'm gonna be engaged and dynamic here. So
all right. Woo.
Okay. So maybe instead of okay, so it's like this. You know how you would agree that running is stronger than walking. So I can bounce on this seat and jump up and down, and I'm using more energy. It's more powerful than just slumping and sitting. Yeah?
Right.
So when I'm on a platform, I actually run across the platform. So I've just had to adapt to that one. Right. So just as running is more powerful than walking, we can agree.
Yes.
So too, a thought is not as powerful, it is overpowered by a spoken word.
Spoken word. Oh, gotcha.
Out loud. Out loud. And so when a negative thought comes into your head, like, I'm so miserable, I'm feeling down.
Right.
Or you're going with the feelings and you start feeling resentful and in your head you're criticizing someone. You need to answer that thought out loud. And now you may need to combine it with the other exercise of okay, even though I might be feeling a bit sluggish, I'm actually doing well and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this. Or it might just be, you know what, you are happy. You're as happy as you make up your mind to be. We're going to think about something else. Sometimes I feel like I go like this, grab myself by the scruff of the neck and say, you.
Right.
And sometimes you do need to hop up and move to a different room to change your thought. You know, when you leave a room and you forgot what you would do, you went for and you forgot what you were doing.
You went for in the first place. Yeah.
You go back to the spot where you were thinking about what you needed to do, and the memory comes back.
Yeah.
Because that thought is in that posture that you have. Change your posture, change your body, change your movements, and actually do something physical. You will lift your mental mindset. You'll lift your attitude and speak about something. It doesn't even have to be about what you were thinking about. It might be, what a beautiful tree. I love the way I'm looking out my window right now and I can see trees and I can see sun on them. And I think, wow, that's beautiful. I'm so fortunate to have a tree out there I can look at. Like speaking life, look, there's plenty of negative things to talk about. We don't need to have it inside. It's like we have a shower on the outside. We need a shower on the inside in our brain and speak life. You can change conversations. When someone's running someone down, you can gently shift the conversation subtly so they don't know what you're really doing, or you can speak goodness about that person being criticized. Now, that person might not appreciate that because a lot of people enjoy running people down. That's what happened in prison. Someone said to me, stop defending her. And I went, oh, really? So I just changed the conversation about things that were hopeful and things that were good. And it's not a Pollyanna thing. It's a psychological thing. You move in the direction of your most dominant thought. Which way are you going? Are you going down the toilet, or are you going to go somewhere where there's hope and there's a future? Because there is a hope and a future.
Exactly. And I think people forget that. No, I'm agreeing with you 100% because I think
I'm very passionate.
This is what I've seen with clients too, because they'll be in the throes of this change and they're mired in the negativity of it. And especially if it's a life change that's difficult. Let's say it's a divorce and they're separating their things or I've had situations where they've lost a child or whatever. And so we're having to reconcile and deal with all the things that belong to the child. And it can be very dark places, but there are ways to elevate your mindset as you're going through it. And so some of the things that, like, for example, in my business life, we'll take something where, for example, this particular child I'm thinking of, he passed away of cancer. And when he was ill, he was given, hundreds of box sets of Legos. So she had all these things, and it was very sad to her to, keep all of his possessions. So we were trying to figure out what we could do, but we found uplifting ways to move those into something positive. So we would deliver them to this place that does rehabilitation for children who've been ill or children who have,
Wow.
autism and things like that. So they do a lot of work with those kids.
Wow.
And so, they went to something that was elevating and helping other children who were, had health or mental issues. And at least for her, as she could let go of those objects that were tied to him, which was the sad part, they were going into an elevated place.
Yeah.
So we always try to do that. I had another client whose wife had passed away, and it was very sad to him, and he was ailing, and he wanted to disperse his things before he got too ill. So what we did was, she had this hat collection from like the 1950s, all these beautiful hats. And I found out about a theater company that was doing a show that needed hats in that time period. So we donated the hats, and then he went to see the show with his daughter in his wheelchair, and he got to watch all the hats in the play. And so, it's again, elevating mindset, or taking the object from a sad situation and placing it into a situation that's elevated. And it was wonderful work, because he felt like he took care of her things like she would have wanted them. And they stayed in the collection at that particular academy. They have a huge costume collection that they rent out to different shows and whatnot. So they were going to get more use even after that. So, and he's since passed away, so I'm sure he would be pleased, at least, the option. But that's the kind of thing we try to do in our business, in terms of taking things to highest and best use, and it's the person in terms of their memory by doing something like that honors. So it's a mental game, and you have to play with people, because a lot of times they're remorseful about just, dumping things somewhere and whatnot.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And those things can trigger the sadness, and yet those things are also the same things, the Legos, that would provide happy memories. So it's, that spirit of thankfulness. You can look at those Legos and think about loss, or you can look at those Legos and be thankful for every memory. Choose to visit the memories and give thanks. And Thanksgiving is an underestimated power, because when you are thankful, you can't be resentful and thankful at the same time.
Impossible. And
you look for everything, and even verbal, express out loud thanks. Get up, move around, touch something, hold it, and be thankful for it. Express that thanks. It changes the wiring of your brain.
Oh yes, the chemistry.
And you're focusing. And I'll tell you what happens when you follow thankfulness. This has been my experience. When you follow thankfulness, what rises up when you're thankful is joy. And joy is the opposite of depression. Thankfulness is the opposite of anxiety. So I haven't felt the more I do thankfulness, and actually I'm going to, when I'll have a free gift for your listeners, which is something that I do that I call empowered peace, and it's a meditation where we get into a state of peace and thankfulness. We combine peace and thankfulness, and joy rises up. So it's an exercise I'll take them through when we get to the point of talking about that. But these are the things that have healed my mental health, not just healed it back to normal, but I am stronger than I ever was, to the point where I can influence others. And that's where you want to go to, where you're contributing blessing to other people.
Definitely. Having that leadership come up.
Now, here's something else that is to do with fear, and you touched on it when you were talking about death. And here's the thing, in our modern society, with the comforts that we have, the trappings around us, we are distanced most of the time from the things that kill off people in disadvantaged parts of the world, generally speaking, which is probably why the COVID has caused so much terror in the Western world, because we're not used to something just knocking people off like that.
Right.
And here's the thing, here's something that I've remind myself, that everybody who enters must exit.
Mm-hmm. True.
Everybody, it's going to happen. You know, you ask, am I going to die? Well, yes, but perhaps not today. And
Right.
so, yeah, probably not today. Can't say for sure, but probably not.
Knock
But
on
here's the
wood.
thing.
Right.
With that in mind, it's important to make peace with the people around you. Not that you run after people who are difficult, but that your conscience is clear. If you owe someone an apology, just do it. Don't expect them to be gracious about it. They might take it badly, they might not. But if there's someone you need to tell you love, do it. Make peace with the people around you, and make peace with your maker if you are that way inclined. That if you can face death and know that it happens to everybody and that you can be at peace with it, then you can accept it. And there is one picture, I haven't put it on my slides, but there's a picture I want to show you that I love. I was watching, I'm going to find it for you. I was watching, and I made it specially. I was watching the show Spartacus.
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
there was one line, I didn't get the whole show. What I got was one line, this conversation where, and I'm going to show you the picture and you can read it. Now, I'm going to do a quick screen share, so I'm improvising here. So hopefully I've got this right. But this really moved me and it freed me up so much. I loved it. Now, it's just a photo and hopefully you're looking at it now. Are you looking at Spartacus?
Yes, yes.
So this fellow said to him, "Are you afraid to die, Spartacus?" And he almost looked surprised. No more than I was to be born. He had just accepted that that part of life that happens. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of pain and suffering. I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not.
Me either.
You know, the method with which we exit is not always comfortable.
Right.
But if you can be at peace with that in your own way, however you do that, it takes a big sting out of it. And it's just that the timing sometimes really sucks. You know, it just, yeah, I don't have a lot of answers for that one.
Right.
But we give thankfulness and we make the best of things.
Yes, for
I hope
sure.
that wasn't too traumatizing for people. That can come across as a bit insensitive, but
No, I don't believe it is. I mean, I think it's a reality. We just don't talk about it often, but I think that it needs to be part of the conversation. And I think it is, these are life transitions, right? That people go through and they may lose somebody or they, you know, they may be facing that themselves. That's all part and parcel to this whole situation.
Well, when adversity hits us, we're often shocked. It's like, why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening to me.
Right.
Like when we don't feel that way when it's a stranger, we just go, oh, shame about that. But when it's us, it's like there's this affront.
Yes.
Why me? Why not you? Why not you?
Right.
It's, you know, I mean, why not you? I don't want it to happen to you.
No, of course. But
adversity
yes.
happens to everyone. Sometimes it's someone's fault and sometimes it's not. But it happens because we're human. Yeah. And if we can get back again to, instead of why me,
right.
Okay, what now? What are the lessons? What's the good? What now? And our mental ecosystem, which we were going to touch on, is about how we frame up, like what goes on in here needs to be protected. So if you're listening, an ecosystem relies on each other, you know, each part is reliant. So if you get a beautiful ecosystem in nature and it gets poisoned, that poison goes all the way through.
Right.
And sickens everything, taints everything. You've got to be careful what poison you allow come into your mind. And it can be through jealousy, it can be through, it could be anything that you dwell on that makes you feel yuck, because it might be something going on at work.
Right.
And because it's taking up time in your mind and making you feel yuck, it's going to pollute your family, your relationships, and how you feel. So you have to protect. So with an ecosystem, you've got to have a filtration system. Is this good for me to stay around, or do I need to filter it out? And then you've also got to constantly nurture yourself with the good stuff. And that might be podcasts, it might be prayer, it might be whatever it is that builds you, taking time out. That's your mental ecosystem. You've got to fiercely protect it. Don't participate in certain conversations. Just get up and walk away if you have to.
Well, especially in the process of change. I think just feeding,
Oh, yeah.
like feeding your
Yeah.
positives, making sure and filtering out those negative things as you're going through, and
It
being
is.
cognizant that that's what's, you know, happening, and self-aware enough to realize. So it's
Change
really
is
important.
something so true. Change is something that we instinctively, unless we're making the change,
Right.
it's disruptive,
Right.
and we automatically don't like it. It's human nature. So we become aware of that. I don't like this because it's natural not to like it.
Right.
But you can look for the good in it, and then you'll be mentally prepared for any opportunities in it. But if you're constantly in a mental state of resistance, like it might be at work, there's a reshuffle at work, and you're constantly in a state of resistance, you're not going to be the one who gets promoted and moved on, you know, for the new opportunities. You've got to be in that, okay, how can I adapt? What can I do? How can I show that I've got what it takes to move forward? And then if I'm not going to fit here anymore, I can be prepared to move on with new, you know, and have an opportunity, rather than that resistance. Some things you resist when it's a moral issue or an ethical issue, sure. But even then, in how you go about it, you don't have to be the problem person. You can be the one who enlightens and helps and guides and
Well, and
influences.
if you've ever been a boss of a number of people, and I know I've done that in my past, you're more attracted as the boss to the person who is adaptive and who is like, okay, well, what can I do? And then the person who's fighting it, you know, you just throw your hands up at that situation, because, you
That's
know,
right.
just
And
more
be an
difficult.
influencer for good instead of one of the underminers. Because most
Right.
people are not openly resistant.
Right.
Mostly what they'll do is they'll go, oh, yes, 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 yes. And then they'll quietly complain to the others and undermine what's going on.
Passive aggressive over here. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, they will.
Well, you have a wonderful, underneath this video, there will be a spot where there will be a place to see your empowered peace meditation you mentioned briefly. So
Yes.
there'll be a link there for the audience to click on that and check that out, so you can find out more.
Yes.
And so that's our opportunity to offer to everyone today. And I just want to thank you so much, Trish, for participating in our event and for all of these insights, because this was a really, really useful talk, I think, and hopefully people who are going through change will absorb some of these thoughts and you know, put them into practice a little bit. And I want to remind everyone to tune in, because this is a 21-day event. So we're going to have speakers each day during August to help everyone work on their ability to thrive through life change and come out with more success and more energy, renewed energy, and a vision that you can get behind and move forward in your life. So I want to sign off tonight, and thank you again, Trish Jenkins, and everyone check in again tomorrow. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.